Hello everyone, and thank you for joining in. This is lesson 6 of the Like and Subscribe series. We have just one more lesson to go after this. So for this lesson, first we're going to set up some on-screen controls, and then we'll finish publishing. But to do that, we need to solve the problem that we have in our color animations when the button and text change states, because as we will soon see, what we've done will not work in Final Cut. Okay, so let's do some on-screen controls that suit this project. And while we're talking about this topic, there are links in the description for some good resources if you want to learn more about on-screen controls. One is a very good summary of the basics from Ian Anderson, published over at MacProVideo, and the other is a couple of very in-depth articles from Fox Mahoney that were published over at fcp.co. There's another link in there for the on-screen control tutorial I did a few years ago. In this lesson, we're going to use a different method. Okay, let's get started. Select the Like and Subscribe group. Add a new group. I'm going to call this the Controls group. Go to your Object menu, to Generators, and add a color solid. Turn it off. This one I'll name Position Rotation. Duplicate it. Call this one Scale. Come back to Pose Rotation. Add the distortion filter, Scrape. Here it is. Now add the distortion filter bulge to the scale generator. So we'll be using the scrape controls for position and rotation. Note that the scrape dial is vertical by default, compared to the horizontal position of the 12 filter we used in my previous lesson. And the bulge filter gives us a ring for adjustable scale. Now to the bulge filter center parameter, add a link. Use the pose rotation generator as the source. Set that to filter, scrape, center, all. Let's rename the bulge as scale and the scrape to position rotation. From the link, now when we move the scrape filter, the bulge filter will follow. Now select the Like and Subscribe group. So we're going to link the parameters of this group to the controls of the filters. Add an X position link. Then a Y position link. Then add an X scale link. And a Y scale link. And then a Z rotation link. So we have rotation, X and Y scale, X and Y position. Select the rotation link. Add the pose rotation generator as the source. Set that to filters, pose rotation, rotation. Okay, now we have control for rotation. Next, select the Y scale. Add the scale generator and then add that to the X link also. Set the Y link to filters, scale, amount, and you'll see the graphic drop to 1/3 of its scale. Now set the X link to filters, scale, amount, and you'll see that drop by 1/3 also. Now this is because filter environments are not local to motion. Motion is hosting the filter. And I understand this as far as I need to for developing plugins, but I can't explain to you the full math behind it. But generally, because our filter value is at 300 and our local motion property value is 100, this relationship will give us a 3:1 ratio, so the group drops to 1/3 of the scale. So to correct that, come to the scale parameter of each link, set that to 1/3 or 3.33, and that restores the group back to 100%. Cool, so we have our scale control. Now I prefer a large ring for the user to have access to, but if you want it smaller, for example, in the filter at 100 by default, come back to the links and change those scale values to 10. I'll just undo that to get back to 300 for default. Now select the Y position link. Add the pos rotation generator to the Y and the X sources. Set Y to pos, rotation, center, Y. You'll see it jump to the top of the project. And then, when we set the X link to filters, position, rotation, center X, the graphic will jump over to the right side. Alright, come to the offset of each link and add a value of -0.5, and we'll have a look at why we need to use these offsets soon. For now, we want to revise the default location of our controls. Because the controls are sitting on top of a text layer, in Final Cut Pro, the text will be the dominant layer. So if the cursor clicks to the control, it will activate the text. So we want these controls to sit a bit higher. Come to the center parameter. Let's try 200. A graphic's going to shift up, so note the new value of this parameter here. Come back to the Y position link and update the value there. Okay, the ring is still sitting over the text. Let's revise that again. Change to 300. Note the value and update your Y position link. Alright, I think that's better, but later on we're going to check if it's good in Final Cut. We might still want to adjust it some more. Let's publish this section breaker and go to the position filter, publish the center value and rotation. Then make sure the Publish OSC checkbox is on. Come to the Publish parameters. Move these new ones up to the top. Rename center as position, or to anything you like. Come to the scale filter. Publish the amount. Come back to the inspector and add that to the section. Note that we forgot to publish the OSC in the scale filter. We'll come back to that later. Okay, so now we have manual controls for the end user also. Now publish the animate breaker. We'll put this up the top. We've nothing else for this section in this project, but this is where I would add any speed or duration controls, or anything else that I've added that regulates the animation of the graphic. Okay, so let's have a look at why we need to do those offset values in our position links to keep the graphic centered. Now again, I don't know the full math behind this, I only understand it as far as I need to for developing plugins, but this is the general idea. These filters are an external codebase that Motion runs as the host. The area of the filter is expressed differently to that of your Motion project. See, there are two sets of parameter values. These smaller ones are the filter values, and as the host, Motion is translating these values into the values required according to your project settings, which in this case is 3840 by 2160. If I set both of these values to 1, the graphic will jump up to the top right corner. And at 0 to the bottom left corner. I'll just undo that. So the filter, by default, has a height from 0 to 1 and a range of 0 to 1 for the width. So when we apply the links default to this 1, 1 position up in the top right corner. So to get our graphic to the middle, we apply an offset of minus 0.5 to put it there, which is half of that range. 0.5 in the filter, which is at center. Okay, so from here, let's finish up the publishing for our cursor graphic. First, publish the cursor breaker. For the cursor graphic, we will publish the size and 2 colors. But we need to link up the colors of the shape layers with the replicator colors. Let's go to the cursor group. Okay, so we have to consider a couple of things here. First of all, this project file has vector shape layers imported from Adobe Illustrator with a script, and those layers tend to have a slightly different tone than local shape layers. So for those of you that do use an Illustrator to Motion workflow with scripts, we'll look at a solution for that. But first, we need to link the stroke filter on the replicator to shape layer 2. We want to link this to layer 2, so let's begin with a regular link and see how that goes. When we do this, you'll see that if you click on the source parameter to get the options, there is nothing available. I'm not sure why it doesn't work with this particular filter. I think it's because the stroke filter, unlike the fill filter and colorize, has a gradient over stroke option. I'm not sure, but let's delete that link. Go to the stroke filter and open up the colors. What we need is a link each for red, green, and blue. So let's do that and name them as we go. Now for each link, apply layer 2 as the source and set to Object, Shape, Fill, Fill Color to complete the links for the blue, green, and red. Okay, quick function check. We are good to go. Now we need to link layer 1 to the source layer of the replicator. First, let's link them directly. Okay, so now if you look close at your project, you'll see that there's a slightly different color tone that I mentioned before. So we need to do it another way. Delete the link. Select Layer 1 and from the Style filters add the Fill filter. Now we will link the fill to the replicator source. Okay, quick function check. The color tones match. We are good to go. Publish the replicator source color and publish layer 2 color. Name them color 1 and color 2. Next, we're going to publish the size. So remember this group? When we animated the cursor, we used functional groups to break the animation up between group roles, and that allowed us to assign independent anchor points. So the cursor anchor is up here, so when the scale is adjusted, the graphic will not creep up into the wrong space. Let's confirm that. Okay, yes, the scaling doesn't shift the fingertip away from where it needs to be. Okay, publish the X scale. And I'll rename this as size and move it above the colors. Next, publish the profile widget and move it into position. Now, let's publish the like and bell icons. Okay, so we have 2 layers each per icon, and each icon is animating the fill and the outlines. So we could take the time to link everything up, but we have an easier option with the fill filter. Select the bell group, add a fill filter. Set the color to 6B, 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 and publish the filter color. Now just hold Option and drag a copy to the like group, and publish that color. Okay, come to the publish parameters, name this one, what is it? Okay, this is like, and this one is bell. Publish the section breaker. And let's see here. Okay, I want to move the order of the published sections around. I'll move the banner section up here under Controls. And Like and Bell section above Cursor. Okay, I'll just do a quick function check to make sure the publishing is all good. Okay, now let's publish the subscribe bracket. Move that to sit below the banner section. And now we can deal with that last remaining functional problem that we have with this graphic. Let's begin in this motion template here. I have a text layer, shape layer, and another shape layer. The text and the first shape are animating a change of color states from white to red. The other shape is animating along the X position. You can see that the animations have been done by keyframes, and those parameters have been published. Okay, so let's jump into Final Cut Pro and see how this works. Here we are in Final Cut. This is the template we were just in, and you can see it doesn't work. None of the keyframes are running in this template. We can see in the inspector that the parameters that we published are dormant. And this is because in a motion template, if you animate a parameter with keyframes and then publish it, Final Cut Pro will ignore the keyframes. By publishing the parameter, you're telling Final Cut Pro that you want the user to adjust these parameters themselves locally. So the keyframes are now redundant. For the X position layer at the bottom, we already solved this problem a couple of ways. Now what we need to do is deal with the text layer and the shape layer. Each of these has its own solution. So let's get back to the motion project and start with the text. Locate your text. Select it. Remove those keyframes on the color and publish the color. Select the sequence. I'll rename this to range to tell it apart. Make sure your playhead is at 2 seconds. Now we could duplicate the range sequence and rework that for the color, but let's do a new one from the beginning. Add a new sequence text behavior. Locate it in the layers here. And use the keyboard shortcut O to trim the out point at 2 seconds. Rename this to color. Add face, color. Leave the sequencing at from. Set the color to 6B, 6B, 6B. Now we have a normal sequence, as you can see here, but we want this to work on just the last frame. Set the spread to 100. Now, if our behavior is 2 seconds at 30 frames a second, that's 60 frames. We want this to work on just the last frame, so 60 minus 1 is 59, and that is the value for our start offset. So now the behavior doesn't start until the 59th frame. Okay, now publish the sequence color. Let's place these into the subscribe section. Name them any way you like. I'm going to name them as text color and text on click. Okay, quick function check. Yes, we're good to go. Okay, now we need to solve the same problem with the shape layer. Select the layout group. Use Shift Command N to add a new group here. I'll call it colors. Add a shape layer. Name it color 1. Duplicate that. Name it color 2. Move it down so we can see it. Grab layer 1, set the color to E3, E3, E3. And set color 2 to FF 2600. Come down and get the button layer. Set the playhead at 2 seconds. And reset the keyframes. Okay, move the playhead to 1.29. Add a link to the color. Name it color 1. Then apply the color 1 shape as the source. Locate the link in the timeline layers. Be sure the playhead is set to 1.29. Now use the keyboard command O to trim the out point here. Select the link and duplicate it. Drop it under the first one. Name it color 2. Move the playhead to 2 seconds. Now use I on your keyboard to trim the start point here. Now move the playhead to the end of the project and use O to set the out point here. Now add color 2 as the source for this link. In the keyframe editor, we can see that this transferal of links has created the animation that we want between the two color states. Publish color 1 and color 2. Come to the publish parameters. Move them into position and name them. I'll just follow the same order as for the text colors. Button color and button on click. Okay, so what else could we publish for this button graphic? We won't publish the text. This is a like and subscribe graphic. I'm going to leave everything there baked in. Of course, we could publish the font and the font size, and then we would definitely need to find solutions to deal with the button animations versus the size controls, but let's save that for another lesson with a graphic where it would make more sense to do that. What we will publish now is the roundness. Come to the button layer. Come to roundness and publish that. Let's move it into place in the section. Okay, now we have roundness, but again, let's consider the user experience. Leaving the roundness free allows the graphic to take a form that's quite messy and ugly. So let's put this on a widget to set a maximum level for the curvature. Unpublish the roundness. Go to the button layer. From the menu, create rig, add a new rig, and add to new slider. I'll name the rig button and the slider roundness. Set the maximum range on the slider to 30. Okay, right now the minimum and maximum values for roundness on the slider are both 30. So move the slider to the maximum value, then click on the minimum value and set the roundness here to 0. A quick test of the function. Let's set the slider to 10 as the default value and publish it. Move it into place. And turn off the color layers. Alright, that is all we have to do for lesson 6. In the next lesson, which will be the last one of this series, we're going to convert this motion project to a Final Cut Pro title template, and then we'll jump into Final Cut and troubleshoot for any problems. Then I'm going to talk to you about adding aspect ratio snapshots to your title templates, and we'll use this project that we've done as an example. Thanks for taking the time to join in and sticking to the end. It was another long one. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.